right? So the second half of the discussion. So the economics of altruism, the analysis of rational behavior by an individual who values the welfare of another. So again, altruism is someone who values the welfare of someone else. Is basically called an altruist. So it is possible to use economics to analyze the rational behavior of an altruist and of the person whose welfare he cares about, and in the process to derive some surprising results. Right? So the idea of breaking down what that looks like in regards to money. So for example, he says, in the first part of this chapter, I asked why marrying for beauty is generally considered better than marrying for money. We now have a possible answer. It is widely believed that beauty is and wealth is not one of the things that makes men fall in love with a woman. So our analysis of altruism suggests that people will work together much more easily if one of them is an altruist with regard to the other, since it is then in the interest of both altruist and beneficiary to maximize their joint welfare.
I think he's sort of speaking to, the history as well, right? Like, historically, I mean, if you remove ourselves from, modern era where, women have become empowered, and I don't, that's a good thing to, and when I say empowered, like, there's tools available that if a woman was to have a child by herself, she can survive without, like historically speaking, like, I don't want to call it a death sentence, but like being a single mother was almost like, it was impossible almost, right? Like you would essentially be living off of the community because of the way, the culture worked historically. And so how much of that is sort of ingrained into this cultural conversation that he's, or the culture that he's describing, is sort of what went through my mind. But I say all that because, you look at the history, even, what was the purpose of marriage, right? We talked about marriage being an institution, I think with Joe Boot. Not extensively, but we touched on it a bit. And there's an aspect of that because of when if a woman was to get pregnant outside of marriage, that was very difficult for her in going forward, right? Like getting married after that was almost impossible. And not almost impossible, that's not the right words, but you're almost unable to provide for yourself for a period of time when it's, the end of the pregnancy / breastfeeding or, rearing a child that's awake and asleep every 2 hours, right? Like, let's just say that 5-month span, even, you are dependent on others. And, having the security of someone committed to your welfare is what marriage provides. Right? So now I know that this person's marriage being the covenant, being the commitment that if I'm going to have a child as a woman, if a woman's going to have a child, there's someone committed to both their welfare and the baby's welfare when they're unable to provide for themselves. And I use, 5 months as like the shortest time span where physically they're unable to do anything else. And so I think of that, legacy through human history, that in today's world we've through economies of scale, through division of labor, through a number of things, the ability to step outside of that scenario has been realized. But there's so much legacy there that I wonder how much of that is, I don't want to say cultural, but, how much does that play into this quote that he's talking about for men? Wealth isn't in general, obviously it's not perfect. Nothing's 100%, but wealth is not something that causes men to fall in love with women. I just found that a very a keen observation, but also a peculiar one that is worthy of evaluating. I mean, some people would, if I wanted to be I want to steel man some of the opposition, they would say that's because of the patriarchy and women were oppressed by men. And that's sort of why I went down the 5-month conversation, because that to me doesn't fit the narrative of the inability for anything else with the way, we survived through history. So I know that's total rabbit trail. But I think altruism and even the idea of someone who values the welfare of someone else, right? The reason I went down that road a bit too was because this, comment or this, part of the chapter that you summarized almost hints that only, or I don't want to say only, but it's altruism is only one side of the relationship, right? It's one person's a beneficiary and one person's the altruist, and I don't think that's a fair. Because he says maximize their joint welfare.
Well, let me ask you this: are you on welfare, Joel?
No.
No,
but the reason I was going.
So you're would you say you're the altruist or the beneficiary?
Well, okay, so I would say I have, and this is where I was actually going to go with it, because exactly what you're saying, right? So my wife doesn't work right now. She's about at the stage to get back to work. The question is when, where, why, how, and COVID sort of blows that blew that conversation up to say what's going on. But the reason I'm wanted to go down that road is because we look at welfare and beneficiary in just his quote almost looks at it in purely monetary perspective. And yes, I know you need money to do things, but I'm a beneficiary from a number of things from my wife. Right? Her, daily upbringing of our children is a benefit to me.
So you are on welfare.
Right? There are.
Well, get off welfare, Joel, you lazy bum.
The marriage. But this goes back to specialization
division of labor
or division of labor.
I'm a
right?
bum.
I'm a beneficiary of. Yeah, I'm a bum. I'm a beneficiary of her labor, and she's a beneficiary of my labor. Right, and some of that has money associated to it, and some of it doesn't. And that's where I was, that's why I sort of dug through the whole, I went, sort of way back into the altruist sort of cultural, because I think there's so much more that if you really look at the reciprocal nature of a marriage relationship, right? If I want to have children and I have to go to work every day, I have to receive the benefit of someone else taking care of my child. Otherwise, I no longer have a child. If I don't, and this is where what I was sort of saying about being a single parent or a single mother, right? It was exceptionally hard to do because I can't provide, I said it on the show before, for the last thousands of years, up until the last 100 years, 95% of the population lived on a sustenance level, meaning they had to provide for themselves to eat today. How do you do that when you have to keep a child alive at the same time? You're going to walk the field with a baby on your back? Maybe. But how much work can you get done in that context as opposed to, having two free hands, let's say? So, I mean, what are your thoughts on altruism and do you receive welfare in your marriage?
Oh my gosh, do I receive welfare? I would say that that I'll put it this way: being on welfare makes me want to get off welfare, right? But there are things Tyra is better than me at, and that that I benefit from. Namely, like the first thing is her hospitality. Like, so prior to our marriage, eating wasn't something I took seriously. You know what I mean? I only ate like to stay alive. I didn't really I just didn't think about it. I just ate just to play video games so I could just, play video games. And then when she came into my life, she got me into taking meals seriously, and she takes it seriously. Ingredients, how things are prepared. So she actually studies the stuff. She looks at, the chemistry of how certain ingredients mix. And so I've cleaned up my diet. I'm feeling a lot better, and so forth. So in that way, like, she feels, and I'm not, this is her words, not mine. She feels at peace, and she feels comfortable, and she feels in her zone when she's in the kitchen cooking. Now, I'm not saying that's what every woman should be doing, but Tyra has the gift of hospitality. So she's at her best. She's in her zone. She's most comfortable when she's in the kitchen, whipping up something, creating something, perfecting a recipe. So you guys so those who follow me on social media, you guys will see me posting the do goodies. Yeah, the desserts, the do goodie desserts. So like I'm the official taste tester in my home. So in that way, I'm definitely on welfare. And sometimes I don't think I'm getting off. I don't think I'm getting off.
Yeah. I don't want to stop that one.
Taking handouts, but the other side of like the beneficiary, and looking at that relationship, like part of the altruism is this, like, I think of the term reciprocity. And so with reciprocity, we like people that like us, right? We like people that like us. So that example where, when you're in school and, there's this girl that you see every day, and you're like, whatever. You don't even notice her. You don't even really care. And then, all of a sudden, her girlfriend comes up to you and says, yo, so-and-so likes you. And all of a sudden, she's looking good to you. Like, oh, well, oh, okay. Wow. She's a lot prettier than I remember. So, but the reason why she looks prettier is because she likes you, and the reverse is the same for girls as well. You don't really notice the guy until the guy thinks a lot of you, and it's a humbling thing when somebody likes you. Like, we never really take that, we never slow down and think about what an honor it is. And I look at it this way: what an honor it is for someone to be taken with you, or as they say in England, someone to fancy you, right? Because our whole life, who's the number one person who fancies us? For the guys, who's the number one person who fancies us? Our mom, right? That's the only woman who's ever thought of us as attractive and loves us. You know what I mean? So to think that there is another woman or another female out there that thinks highly of you, finds you attractive, before she goes to bed, she thinks about you. You know what I mean? Like, that's an amazing feeling to think that somebody thinks that highly of you, that they would think about you before they go to bed. Same thing for the ladies, right? It's an honoring thing. Now, sometimes some of us might get used to the, used to the attention, and then you're not really humble, and you become very arrogant. But looking at that exchange, there's definitely, in my personal opinion, there's always going to be somebody on welfare in the relationship. Sometimes it's both in certain aspects, but definitely, I would say, and this is just my opinion, I think that between the man and the woman, I think that the woman should be on welfare. I think the woman should be on welfare. If I'm going to choose, if I'm going to follow this train of thought, and that the man should be because he calls her into the relationship, assuming he calls her into her. And usually, from experience and from talking to my guys behind the scenes, men usually take care of the things they pursue. They usually take care of the women they pursue. So if they took the initiative to come and talk to you, then they're going to make the effort to maintain that relationship. If she approaches him, then the conversations are always, so what are we? What are we going to be? I feel like the relationship is becoming stale. Those kind of conversations, you already know what it is. You messed up. So when guys, kind of like that book, that relationship book, He's Just Not Interested, which is an amazing book. He hit the nail, the guy who was on Oprah. I forgot his name, but he wrote the book. He's Just Not Interested. And girls are always overthinking. Oh, why didn't he call me? Oh, why is he doing this? Oh, why hasn't he introduced me to his mom? Oh, why? Well, the guy says, oh, he's just not that interested. Guys are very straightforward. They're very simple. We're very simple beings. It's very cut and dry. We already have our mind made up whether we're going to marry you or not. Right? But guys aren't going to burn bridges. We don't do that. That's just not good business. And so I say all that to say that, play your cards right, ladies, fellas, play your cards right. And just make sure that, you're coming out of this business transaction on top, right? As much as you have, the likies, you have to kind of still look at this, as a business transaction.
Please subscribe and hit the bell to stay up to date. If you liked or disliked the snippet, give it a like and share your 2 cents with us in the comment section. And remember, 6 cents makes change.